This is Hanime on Anime, herself in person. Yay! And welcome to part 2 of Hanime on Autism. For this week, I'm going to be talking about the symptoms of autism, although I briefly touched on them in part 1. This week, I'll be going over them in a little more detail. So, to get started, the symptoms of autism include poor communication skills and poor non-verbal and verbal communication. I guess the two are the same thing. And repetitive behaviors. So, when people talk about this symptom of autism, how I like to think of it is, in a nutshell, people with autism are not very good at talking. I mean, literally. One way that I like to describe this is human beings have a function where they can naturally communicate and interact with other human beings. But in people with autism, this function is turned off. Some of what you may see is sometimes an autistic person will randomly blurt out something that's random or it's inappropriate, or sometimes they just stand there and they don't talk, period. And they don't recognize, they can't read body language, and they can't relate emotionally. And I guess another comical one, they can't understand sarcasm, or they can't take a joke, literally. And, you know, I've had this happen before. You know, I've had moments where I randomly blurt something out that I shouldn't say, or I stand there and don't say anything, even though I kind of need to say something. And then there's times where I can't take a joke. And, you know, there's other things too that, you know, I can attest to. But really, when you come down to it, when you talk about the poor communication skills in people with autism, they really have a hard time talking. So another symptom of autism that I'll be talking about is the repetitive behaviors. And based on my experience with autism, I am going to break it down into the two most notable repetitive behaviors, routines and obsessions. And I'm going to start with routines. With routines, every person with autism has them. And really, looking at them, that's how they run their day, is by having these set rituals or having these set of rules. It's how they run. It's how they run their day. I mean, that's how I do things. I mean, I have some kind of ritual set in place during the day that I follow to help me get through the day. And it can be little things. I mean, like take for example, before I get out of bed, I'll play a game on my phone or read the news on my phone before I get out of bed. You know, little things. And while people who don't have autism think that that's kind of unusual, and you're probably right, it is, but it's so important for someone who is autistic, because if you throw that ritual, that routine off, they can't take it. And part of that is because people with autism really can't handle change. They cannot. Well, okay. They can. They have a hard time dealing with it. And I can say people who are higher functioning like myself can handle it better than most. I'm not bragging when I say that. But I can handle it a little better. But I won't lie, there have been times where I have something planned one day, you know, everything's all set out, I'm ready to go, and then something else gets thrown in. I'm asked to do something else, and then I have to put my plans aside and I get pissed. I mean, everybody has that, or everybody does that, but it's worse in people who are autistic. I mean, way, way worse. Obsessions are probably what most people would attribute to the repetitive behaviors of autism, and I'm not going to lie, that's a big one. But really, when you're autistic, there's that little thing that just makes you tick. I mean, it's that one little thing that you absolutely love and you cannot get enough of. I mean, I remember I heard a story one time from one of my old professors about a little boy who had autism who was obsessed with windshield wipers. I'd like to meet this kid. Just kidding there. But it would be interesting. But you get the idea. People who are autistic have this obsession, as I like to refer to it as. So it's probably no lie that anime is my big obsession. And I guess how it works, to be very specific, it's not usually just the entirety of it. Well, okay, it is. But I mean, there will be periods where I get obsessed with one show for anywhere between several months to almost a year, and then I'll move on to another. Like, for example, I was really big on Kill la Kill a few weeks ago, and then now I'm on Code Geass right now. Which reminds me, go read my review from last Sunday. Hint, hint. But, yes, so my obsession with anime is pretty strong, but it varies when it comes to the anime shows or movies that I obsess with. And like I said, it can be, with people who are autistic, it can be little things like windshield wipers, but there's that one little thing that they cannot get enough of and that they cannot stop talking about. I mean, literally. Which kind of brings me back to the poor communication skills, in that they're all really intertwined with each other. To give an example, when you talk to someone who is autistic, they probably will talk only about what they're obsessed with. Like, if you were to talk to me, I would probably talk about nothing but anime, and probably about the show that I'm obsessed with. So expect a lot of comments about how moody Lelouch is, or how Suzaku needs to shut up about Yuffie. I know, for Code Geass fans that are watching this, I know that's terrible, but come on! It's not called Code Geass, Suzaku, and Yuffie. I know, I got off topic there when I said that, but the poor communication skills and then the repetitive behaviors, they really intertwine with each other. They're not completely separate. Well, there really isn't a specific way to talk to someone with autism, but my advice would be to get in tune with them. I mean, find out what they're obsessed with. I mean, that could be your golden ticket to actually talk to someone who is autistic, aside from asking basic information, which you'd probably get pretty decent results there. But I have learned that I like to be around people who have the same obsession that I have. And I guess I not only speak for those who don't have it, but also for those who do. For someone who is not autistic, keep in mind that someone who is probably not going to be as willing to talk to you, but they will probably talk about what they like to talk about. And for people who are autistic, find somebody who has the same interests that you have, so that way you can talk to them better. They may get bored, and you probably won't, but regardless, I think it's very helpful to figure out what that is. And I say that because I have found that I usually don't get personal with friends or family unless there has to be some kind of barrier that has to be past. And usually, if I talk about my obsession long enough to all of a sudden change the topic to something different, you could probably get a little more personal. And again, you don't have to take my advice or not. I mean, I'm not a psychologist by any means, and I'm speaking as someone who's experienced having autism, because, well, I am. But yes, when you want to talk to somebody who is autistic, my best advice would be to figure out what their obsession is. And for those who are autistic, find somebody who has the same interests as you do, because you will find a friend. I mean, that's how I got my fiance. So to wrap up this week's video, the symptoms of autism, I think, are pretty straightforward. And when you talk to someone with autism, they're pretty easy to spot. But I mean, that shouldn't stop you from talking to them, or, you could make a new friend, or you could learn something new, So that wraps up part 2 of Hanime on Autism. Be sure to tune in next Friday for part 3. And of course, stay tuned this Sunday for my next anime review. So until then, bye!